Hey, this is Brandon Crawford from the San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to Torture Cast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants.
Let's go Giants!
With hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, Ben Lee, and Eric Nathanson. Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball, the San Francisco Giants. This is Torture Cast.
Standing on top, not gonna stop. We came to play, ain't slowing down. Falling on, we're here to stay, and we're stomping on whatever's in our way. I'm feeling like a giant tonight.
It's Monday, June 10th, 2019, and this is episode 169 of the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me from Georgia again today, apparently in a sling, a little too much typing going on, I think, is one Eric Nathanson. What's up, man?
I wish I could blame it on the typing. I'm doing all right. That's why if any of you fans out there do wait for the This Week in Giants History, I did not put one out last week because I cannot type with one hand. So pinched nerve in the shoulder, should be back to normal soon. But I hear it's hot out there for you and all the Giants fans in the Bay Area.
Yeah, anyone living inland is dealing with a heat advisory as we speak. Yesterday, Sunday, was really hot. Today, Monday, is going to be a scorcher. It's going to be around 98 here in the South Bay area. So, yeah, fun times. But, you know, as they say, it's a dry heat. And I have air conditioning, so I'm in my air-conditioned office right now. No worries, although I did work in the garage all weekend long. So yesterday, it was one of those things where, you know, you get a good sweat going on. You know, in that, I mean, I had the garage door open, and I'm not in direct sunlight, but the ambient temperature is in the high 80s to low 90s in the garage. But I got the tunes blasting, and I'm just sweating away. I got a water and a Coors Light by my side, and just kind of working away. And I'm out there for like 3 hours, and I'm finally like, okay, I got to go in and do some more stuff. And I walk in and hit that cold air conditioning, and it's like, oh, motherfucker, it's hot out there. But,
You don't totally realize it until you step away from it. I totally can relate. But we have the cloud of humidity that hangs over us. You're lucky to not have that.
That's the thing, you know. Every time I visit the South or the East Coast during summer, it is just stifling. I can take the heat out here. I really can. I actually work up a good sweat. Being in the direct sunlight can be a bit of a pain, you know, but I can deal with the heat okay. But man, that humidity just does not allow your body to evaporate that sweat, and you don't get that evaporative cooling action, and it's like breathing and living in a greenhouse. It just, it's awful.
You can't handle the heat. You know who else can't handle the heat? The Giants can't handle the heat.
Yeah, this is bad.
Yeah, they've gone 2-4 since our last show. They're 26-38 overall. 18 games back of the Dodgers and 6 games back of San Diego for 4th place. And I wanted to point this out. The Giants, 18 games back as of this day, ties their largest deficit from all of last season, which didn't even happen until they lost to the Dodgers on the final day of the season.
Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
So it can only get worse from here.
Yeah,
I mean, it can only,
they're on pace for finishing about 40 games back. I mean, literally, I'm not joking. That's not an exaggeration. They're not halfway through the season, so you double it, that's 36. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, you're talking about 40 games. This is insane. It's not going well for the Giants. And the problem is, you know, well, there's a lot of problems. It's frustrating, especially these last 2 series against the Mets, where they had 3, and against the Dodgers. And they've done this quite often this year. I just looked back at the schedule. They've done it at least 5 times this year alone in 3-game series, where they win the first game and they lose the next 2. And you're thinking, man, once they win that first game, they just need to win 1 out of 2 to take the series. And it's just not happening. And it happened in New York. They won the first game, lost the next 2. Same with L.A., win the first one, lose the next 2. It happened in the beginning of April. They won the first one against L.A. in L.A. They lost the next 2. They've done it. I have it up here, but anyway, just take my word for it. They've done it 5 times this year. So it's a significant portion of their 3-game series this year in which they just have not been able to take that rubber game or the second game of the match. So you get your hope up, but it's kind of like what happened in New York. Once they won that first game, I had that feeling like, oh, God, I hope they don't fall into this pattern again. Then it happened. Then they win the the first game in extra innings, and I'm like, oh, God, it's going to happen again. Here we go. And sure enough, it did. But we'll go through it here game by game because they really there's a couple of games they really should have won in here. They could have easily been 3-3 or 4-2, but that is the difference in this team is they don't have the large margin for error that other teams do. So they have to play the game near to perfection in order to win, while one of these juggernauts can slip up and have a couple of errors, have a couple of bombs off of their relief staff. As long as they're scoring, 6, 7, 8 runs, they're probably going to be okay. The Giants just have no room for error, and I think that's what's telling and glaring in the last 6 games.
I mean, they only scored 16 runs over the last 6 games, and 9 of those runs came into the game we're about to dive into Tuesday, when they won 9-3 after scoring 6 in the 9-3 over the Mets after scoring 6 runs in the 10th inning to get Bochy his 1,000th win in a Giants uniform. And it was fun. It felt like, okay, here we go. We talked about it last week. They righted the ship after the Marlins series by winning 2 of 3 in Baltimore. They were 3-3 on the road trip. And Tuesday night, they go out, they win 9-3 with the 6-run 10th inning, with the Vogt double, Duggar double, and Bochy gets his 1,000th win, and they're having a winning road trip. Mm-hmm. And things, like you said, were looking up at that point. And it was great to see. I'll be honest, I had to watch highlights of that game. I was not in town, but it was great to see the players' reaction and everybody's reaction after Bochy's 1,000th win in a Giants uniform. Yeah. He became the second manager in franchise history to win 1,000 games with the team. And he got on a list of managers all time, it's like 16 long, who have 1,000 wins with one club. The problem is he's one of 2 guys on that list who has a losing record.
And that's what hurts. They flashed his record, and I think he's 1,001 and 1,006 right now after yesterday's loss or somewhere there. And it's really close to 500, but that has only swung into the negative direction this year. And if it wasn't for the last 2.5 years, if they were just playing 500 the last couple of years, he'd be clear of 500 by 30 or 40 games right now. But they've just been so bad in the second half of 2016 into 2017, all of 2018, and now into 2019. That's a significant portion of his managerial time with the Giants that has just, unfortunately, allowed his record to dip sub 500. And, I mean, let's face it, he's going to finish his career with a sub 500 record. That doesn't take away the 3 World Series championships, and that's why he's going to the Hall of Fame. It just leaves a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth.
Well, you have to think that if it wasn't Bochy, if this was any other manager who hadn't won 3 World Series, he would be on the hot seat right now. He probably would have been fired after last season if Absolutely. It wasn't Bruce Bochy. Yeah. But because it was him and his contract ran through this season, with new ownership coming in, that's what's made this season so strange. He's not a lame duck. He's a dead duck. He knows he's walking out the door at the end of the season. And Bochy said it. He did an interview, I forget with somebody, not the DeRosa thing I shared, but he did the interview. I think it was an Ask Amy G it was Amy G. She said she talked to him after the 1,000th win, and they asked about ejections and how does he communicate with his staff when he gets ejected, and he answered, it's kind of tough because you hear the crowd and then you see it on the TV because there's a delay, as we all know, when we go to the ballpark. And he started saying, or I'll just get the messages this way or that way. And Amy G was like, sure you want me to report this? He's like, what are they going to do? He's like, I'm leaving. What are they going to do?
What are they going to do? Yeah.
Make me retire faster? That's not happening. So, I appreciate that. But, it has caused us to have this season that we're having. So we do enjoy the little things along the way, like that 9-3 victory on Tuesday when they really did step up. After losing Posey to a bum hamstring and knowing that Vogt and Garcia had to take over the catching duties, it was nice to see Vogt in the middle of the mix there in the 10th inning. And then just, Bochy, his first game was in New York, so it was kind of nice symmetry for him.
Yeah, that was nice to watch that DeRosa interview, and he was talking about his first game in New York. They went outside of Citi Field to where Shea Stadium's home plate used to be there in the parking lot, and they were talking about, hey, this is where you had your first major league at-bat. He had a single to right field, I think he was recalling. It was neat. You realize the guy has had such a storied managerial career. No, he wasn't an all-star or Hall of Famer as a player, but, he did play in the big leagues, and he was a catcher, and it seems like so many catchers have that baseball IQ that makes them managers. Look how many managers are catchers or have been catchers. It's pretty incredible. It's again, sad to see him go. Sad to see him end his Giants tenure with 3 just horrific seasons. You wanted to see him go out with maybe just one more playoff run just to see what he could do and they could do. He didn't have the tools. Plain and simple, he did not have the tools. And for all the Giants fans on social media, and I know they're trolls too, that are calling for his head, certainly you're a troll, maybe, but you probably just don't know enough about the game to understand that, like you just said, he's a lame/dead duck, and they're not going to fire the guy and hire someone on the interim. His contract expires this year. They're just letting him run this shit out because it doesn't matter who they hire as a manager. It's going to make a difference of a few games here or there in either direction. So in the long run, it was best for all parties to allow this to just expire naturally as opposed to accelerate the departure.
I had to unmute there. I have some flyover from the nearby Air Force Base.
Yeah, it sounds like Shea Stadium I was just talking about.
Yeah,
flyovers. It's so funny because obviously it still happens with Citi Field, but it's so hard when the planes do come over and you're trying to listen and the broadcasters kind of have to be quiet there and wait for it just like you did. So kudos to you recreating Shea Stadium.
I tried. I hit the mute. I have good track record with that. I grew up going to the Rosemont Horizon as an indoor stadium, and it was right next to O'Hare. So I'd be at a DePaul basketball game, and then all of a sudden you hear this whoosh right over the stadium. Right as somebody's taking a shot. I have a tendency to live by Air Force bases for some reason, so I did it in Tampa.
There, maybe. I don't know.
You are. Oh my God, trust me, my area is pretty safe. So back to Bochy and the Giants, and so after he won his 1,000th game, the entire team had a hangover.
Yes,
and
they did.
Shut out 7-0 by Jason freaking Vargas the next day. Jason Vargas. How do you get shut out by Jason Vargas in 2019?
You're the Giants. That's how.
Yeah, and Tyler Beatty got beat up again. It was just everything that has been going wrong with the Giants was just on display in that game.
Yeah, he did not follow it up with a good start. In Miami, he had an incredible start, and we're thinking, okay, maybe this is the kid we've all been looking to the last 2-3 years, and yeah, he's just too inconsistent. I don't know if he's ever going to get the control he requires for the fastball to be successful in this league. He might have it on spot starts like he did in Miami, but he just hasn't shown it so far. And the Giants' offense, of course, gets shut out by Jason Vargas, which, again, like you said, it's not Clayton Kershaw here. The Giants scored 9 runs the previous game, 6 in 1 inning. And just as a preview, the next 5 games total, they scored 8 runs. So they score 6 in 1 inning and then proceed to score 8 over the next 5 games. So this started that struggle. Yeah, not much else you can say about that one. You just kind of tip your cap to Jason and the Mets and say, okay, let's take the rubber match tomorrow. But it was a tight game on Thursday. It was 3-3, I believe, in the 8th inning with a runner on, and Todd Frazier was up, and Melanson had come in, and unfortunately he gave up a home run to Frazier. They gave up 4 runs in total in the 8th inning. But what was frustrating, and there was a lot of talk about that particular home run by Todd Frazier after the game, is, and you do see this from time to time in the major leagues, but there's a lot of talk about the ball being juiced once again the last few years. And there's a lot of evidence for that. They've had some studies where they've cut the balls open and looked at density, measurements and all this stuff. And they've pretty much proven that, yes, indeed, the balls absolutely are juiced, whether intentional or not, which, of course, they claim it's not intentional. It's like, come on, guys. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. Todd Frazier swings at a ball. It was a breaking ball, lone outside. He almost one-armed it, went down to his back knee, and pulled the ball, which generally in those situations you roll over your wrists and ground out weakly to the left side. And everyone in the stadium thought it was a routine fly ball. And it just kept going, and it just kept going. And it went like 3 rows deep. And it was one of those just ugly-ass swings. You're like, how does that go out? I mean, he's a strong man, but he's not Superman. I mean, those are physics in play there that should not be in play. And so it was a little frustrating. But regardless, the Giants are playing with the same rules, right? And that's what you have to point to, is everyone who complained about, well, that shouldn't have been a home run. It's like, well, the Giants use the same ball and have the same bats. Well, they could do the same thing, and they didn't, so.
Yeah, I have to give credit to Frazier a little bit on that home run. Like, it was funny because Melanson comes in, and the general reaction because of the last 2 years is, oh, crap, here comes Melanson. And he's been decent for most of the year. We were singing his praises about a month ago, and he's had a few missteps. And when he gave up the homer to Frazier, it wasn't his fault. It was a good pitch. It was down and away, like you said. And, I mean, Frazier, his butt was in the third base dugout. His front half was in the first base dugout, but he kept his hands back.
He did.
And by keeping his hands back, he was able to get around the ball, like you said, instead of rolling over it and get it out of there. So you kind of tip your cap to Frazier there. But then Melanson still gave up 2 more runs in the inning.
Yes.
So it was like, buddy, we kind of had you back there for a second because the guy made a good one, and then you just served up 3 different meatballs. I don't remember who hit a double, but he served up one it was middle, and the guy just ripped it down the left field line. And Melanson went back to being Melanson, and the Giants went back to being the Giants by losing a game late like that. It was frustrating. On the balls, the AAA is using the MLB balls this year, and the number of home runs have doubled. The number of home runs have doubled in the PCL from last year. And we all know the PCL is a hitter's league. But like this Astros prospect just got brought up, he already had 23 home runs this season. Jordan, I don't remember his last name. Yeah, I think so. Because he homered in his second at bat, but which doesn't happen at Giants prospects. So so the balls definitely are juiced. But like you said, Giants have the same chance as the other team. They just don't have the talent to do what the other teams are doing.
Yep, and that's just plain and simple. And you're right. I didn't mean to take any credit away from Frazier. He did all he could physically to deal with that outside pitch, and he did keep the hands far enough back. It's still just surprising because the physics of it still should not have generated the power to go that distance with a normal ball from, let's say, 5-10 years ago. That wouldn't have gone out. But
probably falls short of the track, and who knows how the game goes at that point.
Both teams still have the same chance, so that's all you got to say about that.
Right.
So they lose that series in New York, and they conclude that road trip. I believe it was 4 and 5, right? I think they were 4 and 5 on that road trip.
They had a chance. Yeah, they had. I tweeted it when they tied the game, or they took a 3-2 lead, or they tied the game at 3. I tweeted it. I said, Giants are playing for a winning road trip right here, and then Melanson.
And then Melanson happened. So we go into Friday thinking, all right, here we go. This is where it doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter who's in first place and who's in last place. It's the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're arch rivals. We're going to have fun. The Giants have played them tight all year long, and they generally do. Both teams play very well against each other. I don't know if it's the Giants playing up to the Dodgers playing down, or just the fact that it's a rivalry, and it doesn't matter what the talent level is because, every game is different. They're not playing 162 games between themselves, which, if that were the case, the Dodgers are going to win 100 of those games, right? But when you have 3-game series, the Giants are going to steal a couple here and there. So they go into Friday and talk about probably the biggest mismatch of the year in terms of starting pitching. Drew Pomeranz, who we've absolutely crucified lately on this podcast, coming in with his 8.08 ERA against Clayton Kershaw, who hasn't lost since July of last year. And you're thinking, all right, well, anyway, can we play Saturday already? And what happened, Eric?
Well, the Giants won 2-1, and Pomeranz went from loading the bases in the first inning to pitching 4 scoreless gem innings after that. And I think it was the sixth inning against Kershaw. Belt fouled the ball off, and I know we're going to talk about this. Belt fouled the ball off that Chris Taylor couldn't catch because he face planted on the mound, and it gave him the length in the at bat. He walked, and it started the rally, and Clayton Kershaw earned his first loss since July of last season.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And Oracle Park did play 10th man in this game. The mound did come into play, like you just said. Chris Taylor came over. He said in his post-game interview he knew that the mound was coming, but he couldn't take his eye off the ball. And the back of the mound was just a little steeper than he had imagined. So he clipped his cleats, fell on his face, and then Belt drew the walk. He ended up scoring. They scored 2 that inning. So Kershaw was pretty upset about it. I don't have the direct quote here, but he said, "Come on, Farhan, take care of this. I'm sure he'll take care of it soon." Dave Roberts, who I respect as a manager, I think he's a really pretty calm and calculated guy. He said, quote, "I don't want to get into it too much, but oversight seems to come into mind. It is what it is, putting players in harm's way and dictating a game, more so putting players in harm's way. It's a liability, but you've got to make do." And the only other that's end quote. The only other MLB parks with bullpens in play are now Oakland and Tampa Bay. And he also, I don't have that quote, but he talked about how, hey, look, positions were reversed early this year when the Giants were playing the Dodgers, when Steve Duggar got hurt and missed a play from doing that. So he basically was saying it goes both ways. The point is, it shouldn't dictate the play of the game, but more importantly, it shouldn't put people in harm's way. And I love as a fan, just purely as a fan's experience, I loved it when I used to sit in those seats right in front of the bullpen. It's fantastic to be that close to Major League pitching, to see the velocity, to see them warm up, it's just like an extra side game that you get. And I personally will be not upset, saddened, I guess, a little bit disappointed when they do eventually move those bullpens. But I understand when it comes to player safety. I mean, look what happened to Mac Williamson last year. Look what's happened to various players over the decades. There's been some pretty significant injuries from tripping on those mounds.
Yeah, I didn't have a. I kind of took exception though. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's an open secret at this point that those mounds are going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what is the point of calling out Farhan by Kershaw? What is the point of Roberts, bringing it up in the first place? If it's kind of an open secret, they're going to be gone. You just kind of say that's how it is right now, but I'm sure it'll be different in the future, which I'm pretty sure it'll be different in the future. And so I was kind of bothered by their comments. They sounded a bit butthurt after Kershaw finally lost a game. And it was like, guys, I mean, I get that the mound played a factor in it, but it's part of the game right now. You just kind of deal with it, It's just like the hill that used to be in center field in Houston. It's part of the game. You just have to deal with it. But it made for a fun Friday night at the ballpark. And I actually want to give a shout out to Tom Pope. He made his way all the way from Australia. He's a listener, and he made his way all the way from Australia with a buddy to be in town for this Dodgers series, and he was able to be there on Friday night for that fun game, and he shared a picture with us on the Facebook page and stuff like that. I just thought that was cool. Great. Yeah, I thought it was cool. One of our Australian listeners came all the way, Tom. So we appreciate you listening, and I'm so glad the Giants were able to win a game for him because, like you said, rivalry game, and that game was intense. That Friday night game.
It was
that 2-1. At any moment, it felt like the game could, swing on a bloop and a blast if it happened. It was old school Giants Dodgers, and I ate up every moment of it because, I mean, you got to suck up the rivalry when you can because there's not much else going on this season. So playing spoiler is the best part.
It is. I was listening to that entire game. I was driving that whole night, but it was intense on the radio. I could feel the tension coming out of the ballpark. It was a lot of fun to listen to. So, again, the Giants win the first game. I'm thinking, all right, on paper, that was probably the hardest one of the three to win. But I hope they're not going to repeat that pattern of winning the first one, losing the next two, especially with Bum going on Sunday. But Saturday's game, again, was pretty well played. The problem was the Giants had so many opportunities to score, and they couldn't cash it in. And that ultimately led to their demise, despite the fact that the bullpen just absolutely blew up near the end. It was the Giants going ahead with an early 2-1 lead, and at one point, I think it was in the fifth inning, they had bases loaded and nobody out, and they could not score a run. And in fact, for the game, they went 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. But it wasn't until later in which Holland came in relief with 2 runners on, walked the one guy he faced. Then they brought in D-Rod with the bases loaded, and he walked 2 in a row, which walked 2 runs in. And then he gave up 2 hits after that. It was bad. It was bad all around. They blew it up that inning, and they eventually lost 7-2.
That's when I turned the game off after D-Rod did all that. I'm not gonna lie. You talk about the missed opportunity. They had bases loaded, nobody out. I think it was the 5th. You might be right on that one. And then Pilar swings at the first pitch and pops it up. And then Crawford ends up rolling over into a double play. And, we were joking around on Twitter, okay, great. How are they going to screw this one up? And right as I sent the tweet back to a friend saying, she's like, well, Crawford's going to strike out. And I was like, nope, double play. The moment I hit send, he put the ball in play and rolled into 2. It's just so frustrating how predictable it can be sometimes. It's not even that they're finding new ways to lose. They're just doing the same thing over and over again, and they're not going to get different results. I'm on the insanity theme here, but I mean, it's just they're not going to get different results. And once they did not capitalize on that opportunity, like you mentioned earlier, good teams can withstand stuff, and the Dodgers withstood that, and then they started piling on, and they won the game 7-2, and they are the best team, I think, record-wise right now in the National League, and they're playing like the best team in the National League. Up and down the lineup, they're taking good at bats. Their pitching's great. The Giants got lucky; they didn't even face Ryu this season. He's been the Dodger this weekend. He's been their Dodgers' best pitcher. So Saturday was one of those games where it was like, okay, they can grab it. They can grab it. Oh, we had our chance.
Yeah,
And
when they have that low hanging fruit, they got to just pluck it off the tree. But instead, they just decide to, it'll fall down to us or something. I don't know. It's really frustrating because the very next day, we get Bumgarner and the Tim Lincecum clone, Walker Buehler, for the Dodgers, who's been pitching very, very well his last 5 or 6 starts, had a classic pitcher's duel. And Bumgarner gave up a first-inning home run to Max Muncy that was a splash hit and then shut it down after that, allowed only that 1 run over 7 innings, but Buehler matched him, actually exceeded him, and they ended up losing 1-0. But I wanted to point out that they, again, were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. And they had runners on first and third with nobody out, could not score. And by the way, that first game, which they won, they were 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position. So for the 3-game set against the Dodgers, they were 2 for 24. 2 for 24, Eric. I mean,
I'm not a math expert, but that seems bad.
That seems bad. Yeah, that's like a 085 clip or something like that. I mean, It was awful. That's definitely the story, I think, for why they lost 2 out of 3. They should have won, 2 out of 3 if they had just cashed in one of those big opportunities. But I think the one thing we do want to talk about, besides the lack of Giants offense, is the kerfuffle that happened in the first inning when Bumgarner gave up the home run. Now, I do want to lead it off with Eric was telling me, because I was only listening to the radio at the time, and apparently Bumgarner was barking to the umpire. So why don't you set this up and I'll play the clip.
All right. Well, the first batter of the game, I can't remember who it was. It was a right hand. I think it was Kiki. It was a right-handed hitter, and the second pitch of the game was like 6 inches off the plate outside. And Bum already started yelling at home plate umpire Will Little. Now, we didn't mention that in that the Saturday game, that home plate umpire Andy Fletcher was just horrible. And both teams were angry at him. Like, I would not have been shocked had Boccia gotten tossed on Saturday. So there was already some, built up, fuel, fire, consternation inside Bumgarner heading into that. And 2 pitches into the game, he's already screaming at home plate umpire Will Little. And Kiki pops out to right field to Pilar, which was an adventure of itself. He lost the ball in the air and finally recovered. And then Bumgarner starts screaming at Will Little again, so much so that Longoria had to come over and separate them. So Bum is already in that red ass, I'm fired up mode. I deserve to get this pitch. I'm Madison Bumgarner. And I'm going to say, folks, the pitch was 6 inches off the plate. And he has been screaming about pitches like that all season long. And it's getting tired. So heading into the Max Muncy at bat, he ends up going 2-0 on Muncy. He goes 2-1 because Muncy swings at a pitch away. And then his 2-1 pitch gets a little too much of the plate. And the ensuing home run.
A little bit more velocity out of him.
Muncy hits this ball to deep right field. Forget about it. Muncy with a splash hit. And some words for Bumgarner as he rounds the bases with his 13th home run of the season. And a 1-0 first inning lead. MadMax with a few more words for MadBum.
He turns on this heater, 92 and up, and I don't know what Bumgarner got mad at. That's about 4 or 5 steps to walk. The hitter, when they know that,
deep right field.
they know it's gone like that. They're not going to run out of the box.
Oh, that thing was hit so far.
So yeah, I know if you've seen it. Yeah, I was trying to allow the audio to explain it there from the national broadcasters, but yeah, he grooved a 92-mile-an-hour fastball up in the zone, and Muncy did what he was supposed to do. He turned on it, crushed it like 460 feet or whatever, well into the cove. He didn't really, in my view, as a Giants fan, stand at and stare at it. He didn't do a Joey Bats bat flip. He didn't do a Tim Anderson bat toss. He didn't do anything like that. He just kind of paused for a half a second, admired it, knew it was gone, took, 3 or 4 or 5 steps, kind of shuffled out of the box and started his trot. Didn't look at Bum, didn't say anything to Bum. So to me, it wasn't egregious. It certainly wasn't put your head down and run. But in this day and age of let them play, I didn't think it was that bad. But MadBum, like you said, might have already been irked from the umpire, decided to take ill will from it and decided to bark back. And Muncy, stood up for himself and, and barked back all the way around the bases. And that's what you had.
Yeah, I really think Bum was wound up. And I feel like, because this blew up nationally yesterday, and I know Giants fans were seeing it and talking about it. And that's why I say if you didn't see the batter before it, there's some context lost. Because Bum was already in that fight. And we love the competitive fire of Bum. I always have. And you want a guy like that. You want a guy like that pulling the other players along. You want to see that fire. But it just feels misplaced sometimes. And screaming at Max Muncy there, the guy beat you. I'm sorry, he hit the ball to Oakland. You got to tip your cap sometimes to the other team. And there was just absolutely no need for Bumgarner to be screaming at him as he ran around the bases. And I give credit to Max Muncy's quote. While he doesn't understand bodies of water, his point was well taken, where he told Bumgarner as he's going around the bases, if you don't want me to watch it, go out there in the ocean and get it. Now, granted, it's a bay, it's not an ocean, but still, his point stands. And I agree with Muncy. And I got to tell you, when Bumgarner, I saw the video today, when Bumgarner hit his home run this year in LA, he took about 3 or 4 steps out of the box before he started trotting around the bases. Mm-hmm. No different than what Max Muncy did. So I appreciate his fire and I appreciate his post-game comments, but I wasn't a fan, and I can't get behind Bumgarner here at all.
Yeah. Now, I do have a quote from Madison Bumgarner after the game, one of the few times where he kind of cracks a smile and the reporters really laugh. But here's Bumgarner talking about his exchange with Muncy after the game.
God, I can't even say it with a straight face. And I was going to say, the more I think about it, you got to just let the kids play. That's what everybody's saying, but I can't.
Well, what did he do? Is just a long stare at the home run, or?
Oh, he just struck a pose and walked further than I liked. That's fine,
Mm-hmm.
That's you want to do that, do it. But I'm going to do what I want to do.
In all seriousness, I think that the game is changing a little bit in terms of what is.
Oh, it is for sure.
It is. Just not for you though.
No, they want to let everybody be themselves and letting me be myself. That's me. I'd just as soon fight than walk or whatever. So just do your thing. I'll do mine.
So interesting, coming from the perspective of look, I understand that the league is coming out and saying let them play, but hey, if I'm going to let them do their thing, then I'm going to do mine. So don't give me shit for that. Basically, is what he's saying. So, and for everything that Bumgarner does, I do like the rivalry that he had with Puig. He definitely has barked at umpires almost every start. He's got that fire and that competitiveness that I think a lot of people respect. I think nationally it's starting to tire a little bit. That's the feeling I'm getting. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, pitchers don't have to let everyone bat flip or walk or stare or whatever, even though I agree this time it wasn't egregious. My point, and I guess his point, is well, okay, fine. Let them do whatever they want, but let me do what I want too. It's the same thing. And he's got a point there as well. Now, should it have happened at all? No, I don't think so. But, if you're going to let the players be themselves, then let the pitchers be themselves too, as long as there's no harm coming from it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The one thing I don't want to say give Bumgarner credit for it, but the one thing that Bum didn't do is throw at anybody or put anybody in harm's way. So, yelling is just yelling. That's all it is. They didn't fight. And it ratcheted up the intensity so much so that we were all expecting the benches to clear in the first few innings. And before Muncy's next at-bat, Will Little, the home plate umpire, came out and he put the ball in. Bum needed a new ball, and he put the ball in Bum's glove, and Bum kind of gave him I'll play nice this time.
Yeah, I saw
reaction.
That. The umpire kind of nodded and everything, so
yeah.
it looked like
but
they kind of cleared the air there.
I also want to give credit to Will Little. See, as a former umpire, I understand the umpire's job is not just balls and strikes, outs and safes. The umpire's job is to keep the game running smoothly and to keep everything going. And after Muncy's home run, after Muncy had crossed the plate and went to his dugout, all of a sudden Will Little turned to the Giants bench and Bochy came up a couple steps. And all of a sudden you saw one of the bat boys run out with a towel so that Little could, wipe himself off or something, because they didn't show it on the camera. And to me, that was a great move because he gave the game another minute to breathe so that tensions could calm down a little bit, so that Bum didn't step back on that rubber, still as fired up as he was going around the bases. And that's one of those little underrated things that good umpires can do. And I've never talked about Will Little in my life. I've never even noticed Will Little. Like I know umpires by sight really, really well, and he's not one of the guys I know by sight. And I just thought that was really impressive that he was able to do that because, as we saw, nothing else happened during the game. No warnings were issued, nothing like that. And literally nothing happened during the game because, as you said, the Giants' bats went silent. But, I'm tired of it. I'm not going to lie. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of Bumgarner screaming at umpires on pitches that aren't even like the guy's just doing his job. He's calling the game correctly. What are you screaming at him for? Yeah. You're not going to get every pitch. It's just not the way it's just not the way it is. If it's a ball, it's a ball. So I'm getting tired of that. I don't think it plays well anymore. I don't think it's a good look anymore. And, the one benefit from yesterday was, and I hate to say it like this, but his trade value went up because Bum really did pitch a great game against one of the contenders in the National League.
Yeah, his trade value definitely went up, and now there's been a couple of rumors over the last couple of days that the Yankees are definitely interested in him, so we'll see if anything comes of that. It'll be funny if he does get traded to the Yankees because they've been talking about Clint Frazier being mentioned in rumored packages or whatever, and I don't know if he would be a good fit in San Francisco given his tendency and his attitude, but I mean he definitely has a lot of raw talent. But to see MadBum without facial hair in New York, if he ended up there, that'd be pretty
That would be weird. Yeah, whenever you see
weird
flashbacks of those guys like Belt, Bum, and they're baby-faced and clean-shaven back in 2010 and 2011, they look like babies back then. And now they're like, Bum's a man.
Grizzled men. Yeah.
Right. So, it's funny to see. It's just, it was frustrating. And on the overall whole, the Giants, again, they had a chance, like you talked about, to take the rubber game of a series. And for the fifth time, I think you said it was. Yeah. They failed to do that. And it's just an overarching theme with this team. And, credit to Walker Buehler. He did pitch a great game, and Baez and Jansen on the back end as well. But, it's not getting any better. And that's part of the reason Bum is probably so angry and fired up. And I will personally miss that fire. But I think I really don't want him to ruin the hero and the legacy by acting like a baby, and I feel like he did.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think that there's a time and the place for that kind of attitude, and the first inning with a home run, that's not the time or the place, especially if you're in last place, 17 games behind the Dodgers. It's like, come on, don't do that. Just suck it up, tip your cap, he got you, and just pitch the rest of the game. So, hey, Eric, how are the Giants left fielders doing this year?
Yeah, we have in our notes a stat check thing, and I couldn't come up with anything. So I went digging, and, we knew the left field situation was bad. And when Mike Yastrzemski got called up, we thought it was getting better because the kid started off pretty decently. But nope, Giants left fielders are batting 165. They have 3 home runs. They have a .484 OPS. They scored a whole 17 runs all season and 58 total bases. And all these stats are the worst in the major leagues for a left fielder. Mm-hmm. So it is still a black hole. The curse of Barry Bonds remains.
The curse of Barry Bonds took the next 20 years of any kind of batting prowess with him. Seriously, he left a wake in his departure after the 2007 season, because it has been since 2007. It has been 12, 13 years since the Giants have had any production of any regularity out of their left fielder. And I don't think any team has come close to that kind of a stretch of a void of production in one position for that long length of time. It's astounding, and I don't understand how statistically it is going on. But I did want to mention, and we'll get into the draft here in a second, Mac Williamson, who was DFA'd for the second time within like a couple of months, he did elect free agency like we talked about last week. He ended up signing with the Mariners with the Rainiers, their AAA team, and on his way to Tacoma, he actually was called right up. So it was really cool. As a Giants fan, you want to see him succeed because I think he has the talent. He's always been that quad A player. We're always talking about it. And everybody was very, very happy because he comes up to pinch hit in the 6th or 7th inning in a complete blowout and just crushes a home run to dead center. First at bat with the Mariners. And everyone's like, yay for Mac. Maybe this is the change of scenery he needed. And we talked about the change of scenery. But I also tweeted out, I was like, hey, congratulations on Mac hitting a home run in his first at bat. But hey, Mariners fans, just watch out. He over in the first game with the Giants this year too. We'll see what happens. Something to that effect. So I just did a quick check right before we started the podcast. And sure enough, since that home run, he's gone 2 for 15 with 5 strikeouts. He's hitting a $188. So you're welcome, Mariners fans. This is kind of what we expected. I don't want him to fail. I don't want him to fail. It's just this has been his track record. And so it's not surprising at all.
Yeah, I don't want him to fail either. But it's you get what you get. And the Mariners got what they got, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, the Giants finally, with Farhan at the helm, have recognized their absolute shitty farm system and the fact that they need some hitters. Their hitting is just on the floor. It has been for years. They need to really start addressing it, even at the sacrifice of drafting pitching. And it showed in the draft. We were talking about it last week and their need for hitters, and they took hitters or positional players in their first 10 picks, which the Giants have never done. And their first pick, of course, in the 10th round, the 10th pick overall, they took Hunter Bishop from ASU. And what's really interesting about this kid is he grew up a Giants fan. He went to school at Sarah High School in Palo Alto, and then went to ASU, just like Barry Bonds. He grew up going to Giants games with his brother, who is actually on the Mariners right now, although I think he just ruptured his testicle, by the way, this week.
No, that was Mitch Haniger.
Oh, that was Haniger. You're right.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't know Braden Bishop was his older brother.
Yeah, Braden Bishop is his older brother, so he's with the Mariners, and they both grew up Giants fans going together. So really cool. Their mom had I think it was ALS or was it dementia of some sort, Alzheimer's. But anyway, they've started a foundation for their mother. By all accounts, this kid is really, really got a good head on his shoulders. And for me, and I think for a lot of Giants fans, I think that's really ultimately important, along with all the tools set. But he's exploded this past year. He hit 22 home runs with ASU, hit over 300. The guy is pretty much a 4-tool player. His arm is kind of lacking as far as what the scouts are concerned, but he's very speedy. Obviously raw power. And a high average. And the biggest thing they were talking about is his propensity for taking walks, just like their second pick, forgot his name, Logan, what's his face, who has horrible speed, but these are the kind of numbers that Farhan has always looked for. So I think the Giants, in reviewing the first few picks, have done pretty well for themselves, even though they were fairly obvious picks as far as being the best player available at that time. But I think there's a lot of excitement. Overall, the Giants ended up in all of the rounds, the 40 rounds or whatever they have, ended up drafting 26 four-year college players, 2 junior college players, and 12 high school players. But those 12 high school players are mostly pitchers, and they are at the back end of the draft. So oftentimes you don't see those kids signing. They'll go off to college. So don't expect too many of those to sign.
Yeah, the one thing I also read is that Farhan really wanted to take a local slant in this draft and get products of the Bay Area. And like you said, Hunter Bishop falls right into that, taking the same path as Barry Bonds and almost Tom Brady, except Tom went to Michigan because, Tom also went to Sarah High School.
Yes, he did. Yep.
So, that it was neat, though, that he has the same path to Bonds. And, the future's starting to look a little bright between Bishop and, I'll mention Ramos and Bart a little later. It was good to see the Giants go for hitters. Like you said, we're not used to seeing that. This is the first time they've ever taken position players with their first 10 picks. And, overall, there's a bunch of names we don't necessarily know just yet. But it seemed like the Giants have a direction. We've all been screaming about we need to see the direction the Giants are going, under Farhan and new leadership. And I think the draft started to give us an idea of what that direction is. So, the rest of the season now they can focus on the trades and the things that they need to do to improve the ball club long term. So from everything I read, it turns out it was a pretty good draft for the Giants and for Farhan. I mean, this is the same guy, Farhan, who drafted Walker Buehler for the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. After Walker Buehler had just had Tommy John surgery. So he took the flyer on him. So I'm willing to trust Farhan. I'm willing to trust the picks that he is making as possibilities down the road, because he is looking for specific things, like you talked about, getting on base. And we're going to see a shift in philosophy, and I think it all started with the draft last week.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Giants here in a couple of years, especially with Ramos and Bart coming up maybe by the end of next year. We'll see. We don't know. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, let's talk about the short list of who's hot. We have Brandon Belt going a robust 5 for 16. Again, every week we have to really stretch to find out who's been hot for a week. Hitting over 300 in 1 week is not hot, but it is for the Giants. So 313 average, 1 home run, a double, and 5 walks. And then Longo, 6 for 20. But all singles, even 300. That's not exactly what we're looking for from Longo, but it's better than going, 3 for 20, I guess.
Yeah, and we're not going to go deep on Longo. I think we're going to end up having to talk about Longo later this season because...
they reminded me on the national broadcast on Saturday that he is signed through 2022.
Yeah.
2022. I mean, he's got this low production last year and this year. He's still got all of this year. All of 20, all of 21, and all of 22. He's got 3.5 years left with the Giants. This isn't good. This is not good.
Yes. Thank you, Bobby Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby Evans. Exactly.
So,
hell, when that happened, I didn't like the trade. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the veteran leadership, but it was with Kutch and all that, but I mean, we lost the trade. I don't even care who we gave up. We lost the trade, and so we flip it around to who's not hot. So who's not. And we've got Steven Duggar went 2 for 14. Yes, I think he hit the rocket off the pitcher on the Tuesday game in the 10th inning. Uh-huh. But he's 2 for 14 over the last week for a 143 average. Crawford, 2 for 14, 143 average. And poor little Yaz, he went 4 for 23 this last week, which was 174, and he struck out 7 times. Ew. And overall, Yaz's numbers are starting to plummet towards all the other left field numbers so far this season. Yastrzemski is 12 for 52 with a double, a triple, and a homer, and 5 driven in, and he struck out 16 times in 52 at-bats, as opposed to Mac, in his 51 at-bats, struck out 18 times. So as much as we were screaming about Mac's strikeouts, Yaz is starting to climb up the ladder too, and he's starting to show why he was in the minors for 7 years. It was a good story. It's a fun story, but again, he is not the future in left field. He's just another name in a long line, and I don't know how long of a rope they give this kid, because I don't know what the options are anymore at this point.
I don't know. The Giants might as well try 30 different left fielders this year. I mean, geez,
I think we're up to 11 have started out there. I mean, Vogt started a game out there, for goodness sake. So, I mean, we could focus on the who's not, but pretty much when we go through the games, that highlights it anyways.
Yeah. So Ramos was named Cal League All-Star. That's pretty cool. He was, he's been on the injured list a little bit this year, but not as much as Joey Bart. Why don't you talk about Bart's return from his broken hand?
Yeah, he was out for Bart was out for I think about 6 weeks, and since he's come back, he's had 21 at-bats. He's hit 3 bombs and 2 doubles. He's got, I think, 6 hits overall. So out of those 6 hits, 5 of them are for extra bases, and he just didn't lose a step. It's like he came back and said, "All right, I'm going to show you guys that this hand injury didn't slow me down," and it didn't. And when you see stuff like that, it gets you excited, like we just talked about, for the future. And at some point, Posey's going to groom this kid. And I know Ramos and Bart are who we usually key on every week in the minor league report. I'll try to do better for next week and try to get some other names. Look at Jalen Miller, maybe look at Jacob Hayward, maybe Sean Jelly or somebody like that. But every week, it's when he's healthy, Bart is just jumping off the page. Yeah. And it's such a good sign as Giants fans that, I see light at the end of the tunnel. I don't necessarily know how the train's going to look, but I see light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that it's not going to always be this way. So it's good to see Bart come back, because a lot of times when you come back from a hand injury, you struggle because your grip is not as strong. You're not necessarily as focused. You don't have the strike zone down as well. And Bart, being able to come back and hit 3 bombs and 21 at bats since his return, that shows he might be something special.
Yeah, he definitely looks like the future for the Giants, and I know a lot of people were saying, maybe he'll be up by the end of the year, but with his hand injury, that's pushed back. I don't expect any kind of September call-up this particular year. But if I recall, isn't this the last year they're going to have the rosters expand in September?
Correct. This year is the last time it goes to 40. Next year it drops down to 28. Yeah. But I think there's a caveat where you can carry like a couple more players. I'm not sure, don't quote me, but not dress them. So you have to submit your roster game by game when it comes to September.
Okay.
So I think that comes into play. So this would be, though, the last year to just throw everybody they can onto the 40-man to see what they can do. And I'm not sure the Giants are going to do that. They're still sitting at 39 on the 40-man. So they haven't shown that they feel like they have to fill up the roster. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to September call-ups, I'm with you. The injury slowed them down. I don't think we're going to see Bart this year. But I don't think the roster crunch is going to matter next year. I think he's going to force his way up.
I think so too, and typically a guy like him, I would foresee him jumping directly to AAA next year. I don't think they'll put him in Augusta, but I could be wrong about that because PCL is a hitter's league. They might want to see him seasoned up there for a good year or whatever. But then I could see him making his debut either because of his significant injury in 2020 or some, halfway through to the end of the season, even though they don't have the big roster expansions. We've seen guys on the team this year that we had no clue would be on the roster even weeks before they were called up or signed. So, anything could happen, especially with Farhan, but at the same time, this is a kid you don't want to rush. You just don't want to rush. And so a guy of his quality typically takes around 2 years, and this is year 1, but with his hand injury, that pushes him back. So that's why I think it's reasonable to not expect him until the end of 2020. But again, the need may necessitate him, or his performance may necessitate it. If he's up in double or AAA just tearing the cover off the ball and the Giants are struggling or Posey's hurt, maybe you could see something like that.
Yeah, I hope he forces his way up. I really do. We need that flicker, especially because half the team's going to be gone soon. We need that flicker of hope.
All right, so this week in Giants history, although you got the injury, so maybe it might not be happening this week, but we can talk a little bit about it.
I'm going to fight my way through it. I don't care. This is a very special memory to me. 7 years ago what is today, Monday? So 7 years ago this Thursday, Matt Cain threw his perfect game against the Houston Astros, a 10-0 whooping, and he struck out 13? Shit, I didn't even look up the box score just because it's so imprinted in the brain. And so I'm absolutely going to write about Perfect Game. But do you remember where you were for that? And what is your memory of the Perfect Game?
Yeah, I was actually at home watching the game. And I hadn't been watching the entire game. It was just one of those like, it's a 6th inning. It's a perfect game. Okay, I'll start tuning in. It was incredible. I wish I was there. I know there were a lot of my friends that were Facebooking and tweeting from the game, and when it happened I was like, man, I would have given so much to have covered that game or been at that game as a fan or whatever. But yeah, pretty special moment. Of course, what really stands in our minds, in my mind, of course, is Blanco's catch in right center, and then Arias at the end of the game with his stumble at third base. It looked like, oh my God, he's gonna blow this, and then he somehow locked his feet down and threw basically flat-footed across the diamond and threw a strike and ended that perfect game. So it was, every perfect game and no-hitter needs a wonderful catch or two, and he definitely had the support with that, again, unbelievable sprawled-out catch by Blanco in right center field. I still don't know to this day how he caught that ball. But
yeah, I don't know.
I know it was like Angels in the Outfield from the movie. He was like carried over there or something, but...
It was Kane's night, and even Kane's wife was even there that night, which was the wives are not always at the games. And on my end, I remember it was, I don't remember the day, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I started watching the game, and the wife, not the wife then, but the wife now, she was in she was in the bedroom doing something, and I remember after the third inning, I drifted back and I said, "I might be coming back again here."
Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
I might be coming back again here because I think that Kane's got the stuff tonight, and he did. Like, I called it very early in the game, and it was very emotional for me because my father died earlier that year, and this was the first big Giants moment without him. And so it is just plastered in my brain, and I'm not afraid to admit I sobbed that night. I cried like a baby because it was just, it was that giant hug that I felt like I needed from my dad, even though it wasn't the Barry type thing, because I loved the Barry stuff at the end of the season. But the Matt Cain, just that day, it like made you sit up and notice, like, okay, maybe something special really is going on here. And, it kind of set the tone for the rest of the season, I thought. And I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget what I was drinking. I was drinking gin and tonic that night. I remember where my laptop was sitting. I remember literally everything about where I was in my apartment when I was living in Tampa at the time. And Giants fans, I think everybody listening to this probably also remembers where they were. It's just one of those moments. Where were you when? And like you said, that Arias stumble at the end and then able to recover in flat foot. And Kipe's call was just beautiful. And I'll throw the video in there as well when I write it up this week, hopefully Wednesday if the shoulder's feeling better. And it was one of those moments, and I miss those moments. But, it's great to look back on that. And I'm kind of blown away that it was 7 years at this point.
That's incredible. So I have to play it. Here we are, 10-0, seventh inning, nobody out, top of the seventh, full count too, which made it more important because he throws a ball and he loses the perfect game. Here's the outstanding catch by Gregor Blanco.
And this is hit out into the alleyway. A long run for Blanco, and Blanco's going to dive, and he makes the catch! Just an unbelievable catch here in the seventh inning. This is unbelievable.
Into the gap, and he was in that direction in the first place, and then at the last moment it looks like no, but it makes the desperation dive, and then he has to hold on to it as he hits the deck. Look at the concentration there, and look at that play. And Matt Cain was watching as well. Yeah. And maybe saying the same thing. Are you kidding me?
And he tips his cap.
Just an incredible play. Just every time I see that, you just kind of go, how the hell did he do that?
I got goosebumps just listening to it. I'm not kidding. My whole body just reacted. That's what I mean. It's a visceral moment. It'll always stay with you.
Just stuck in Giants lore and in our memories. Just one of those fantastic things from that run of 2010 and 2012 and 2014. It's just a little indelible marks here and there across the board. It's hard. It's hard because, you and I talked about it over the years, and we're so thankful that as long life Giants fans, we had that period of time of, 5 years plus that the team was, at least successful, 3 of those 5, but certainly memorable in so many ways. And it's hard. It's really hard to kind of fall so far from just 3 years ago when they were in the playoffs, to where they are now. And with no immediate hope on the horizon, it's a tough place to be, but again, there's not many teams that get to go through this in terms of a fan base, in terms of a mini dynasty. You had the Yankees in the 90s. The Red Sox certainly have been successful, but definitely more spread out, having their 4 titles over a longer period of time. And the list kind of starts to dwindle to nothing after that. So a little bit of the Cardinals, but yeah, the Giants, we've been lucky. I feel bad for the kids who are just becoming baseball fans now because they just missed it.
Yeah, they did. Those were the golden years of San Francisco Giants baseball. And when we were living in it, we tried to recognize it, but it's just even more apparent nowadays.
Yeah, way more apparent. All right, well, coming up, the Giants have continued the homestand with 2 against the Padres and 3 against the Brewers. They have a lot of off days this week, and they had a couple last week, so it's been good for the team, I'd say, overall. I'm sure the players enjoy it, but at the same time, It doesn't seem to be helping their performance on the field any time lately. So we'll see what can happen. But San Diego definitely has fallen flat after they started the season so hot. They, I think, are underperforming to what people expected, and the Brewers are right there near the top or at the top of the NL Central. So definitely a couple of tough series coming in.
Yeah, and looking a little farther ahead, the Giants go to L.A. for a 4-game set starting next Monday. Yeesh. But if they keep the rotation in shape the way it is right now, Bumgarner's not going to pitch in L.A. because he should pitch that third game versus Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
Next Sunday, right. But because they have the 2 days off, they could bump everybody back a day. Maybe, skip, I don't know whose start. I know Pomeranz had a good start last time, so they're going to be hesitant. But they could, just so they can line up Bumgarner maybe for that Dodgers series, and we'll get, Bumgarner Muncy Part 2 possibly. Because like you said, there's always juice in the rivalry when it was like Bum and Puig. So it's nice that Bum has a foil in Muncy again at this point. But San Diego, they have fallen flat. The Giants are catching them at the right time. And Milwaukee, who knows how they're going to play away from home, because Milwaukee owns when they're at Miller Park, but they're not as good away from the road. Yeah. So it'll be something to look for, because Milwaukee is tied, or I think they're tied at the top of the NL Central with the Cubs right now. So it's more contenders that the Giants have to deal with. So this isn't going to be an easy week, but the Giants absolutely could hold their own.
Yeah, I hope so. And I also hope that Bumgarner does pitch in L.A., because when you have 4 games against L.A., how could you not have Bumgarner pitch? Right. And secondly, I want to see the Dodgers' reaction, the fans, I should say, their reaction. And I want to see how many people are going to be wearing those T-shirts. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter already.
Yeah.
One of the companies came out and said, if you didn't like that home run or whatever, go get it out of the ocean in Dodger script, where it says ocean. I thought it was pretty funny. But anyway, I want to see that reaction. And Bumgarner loves that kind of negative reaction. He loves that kind of pressure. So I think he'll do great, and hopefully something doesn't blow up with him and Muncy. But I think you got to have Bumgarner pitch, especially with, like you said, 2 off days this week. They can funk around with the rotation and do that.
Yeah, I almost expect them to do it, because knowing that Bumgarner starts might be running out, they really do want to showcase him again against a contender. Granted, Milwaukee is a contender, so if he can pitch Dodgers, Milwaukee, Dodgers back to back to back, that really gives the Giants an opportunity to showcase what he's got. And if he comes out well, and I know, folks, we're talking about Bumgarner like he's already out the door, but short of him signing an extension, he's out the door. The only way that he won't be out the door is if they announce an extension, because they don't want to they're going to get compensation if they trade him. They don't get compensation if he walks away after the season. And I don't think they're going to sign him to extension. I don't think he fits into what Farhan wants for this team. And I'm okay with that. We'll always – it's been a very Bumgarner-centric podcast, but I will still always love that man. He will still always be a hero in Giants lore.
Yeah, Farhan is definitely the kind of Bill Walsh executive where he's going to get rid of them before they are bad. Even if they have 1 or 2 good years left in them, you get rid of them earlier than. And look at how the Giants have been bitten by that in the past with all of the bad contracts. They tend to sign the Giants for their past successes and not their future projected performances, and that's been their biggest Achilles heel in terms of these contracts. You go from Kane and Lincecum and Zito, and Zito wasn't a thank you. That was more of, everyone could see that one. Everyone could see that one and go, what are you doing? The bad trades, they've really dug themselves a hole, and it's not Farhan's fault. So he's going to be the architect of getting us out of this mess, and hopefully he'll do it. And Bumgarner is part of that process, because the Giants aren't going to be good for at least 2 to 3 years, and by then Bumgarner is going to be on the backside of his career, and probably performance will have really, significantly depreciated by then. So he's not a part of the future of the Giants, sadly to say. He's just not. And so what do you need to do with him? Like you said, well, if you're not going to sign him to an extension, then he's going to walk. Well, if you let him walk at the end of the year, you don't get compensated for the trade. And then if you trade him, you get compensated and you get the value of the prospects that you're getting. So out of all 3 scenarios, the best one is to rip off the Band-Aid. It is. And I hate to say it, but I think that's the route they have to go. And there's no doubt. I mean, I got to put it at a 90-something% chance he's getting traded by the 31st.
Yeah, I have to agree there. But it should be fun to see where the Padres are at these next couple days because the Giants haven't seen them for a couple months now.
Yeah.
And like you said, they were a better team back then, and they've fallen back down to 500. They're the fourth place team right now.
Yeah.
The Colorado Rockies are in second place right now. I mean, not that it really matters. The Dodgers are running away with the thing. But, it seems like those three teams are jockeying. So the Giants have a chance to play spoiler this year, and they need to go out there and do the work. They need to beat up on the NL West when they can.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for episode 169. You can follow us collectively at TortureCast, individually at 2 Hits for Eric, myself, that's with the number 2, by the way, myself at ChadK21. Like us on Facebook. Obviously, check out our website at torturecast.com where we post all of our podcasts and episodes, and as well as This Week in Giants History and other things. We're going to be taking a week off. I'm going to be traveling with the family next week, so it's probably going to be 2 weeks until our next episode. But other than that, what you got, Eric?
Nothing. Just hold on. I'll still have a This Week in Giants History next week. While Chad's on vacation, I'll still be slaving away at the website.
Typing with your one hand, click.
Yeah.
Click,
oh my God,
click.
It's the worst.
Gonna put you on the IL, man.
The wife keeps laughing at me because I'll sit there with the computer in front of me during a game, and by the time I get out what I want to say, it's like 3 batters later already, and I can't get it out anymore.
You got to start trying your voice dictation software and see how well that does for you.
You're not kidding. It's something I definitely have to. Hopefully the pinch nerve will go away. Just don't get old, folks. And I'm sure a lot of y'all are totally feeling me on this one as well. Oh. I mean, I'm not sure if I slept funny or what, but that's what happens. So at least we will have some stuff while Chad is away, and then I think we'll probably be back in a couple weeks, and we'll be starting to head towards trade deadline season, and who knows, the Giants may have made some moves by then, so hopefully we'll have some stuff to talk about, and maybe at that point we'll be able to go through who the Giants' best assets are to trade, because another couple weeks they could be 23 games back by the end of that.
Yeah, that's a very sad prospect to face. Well, get better. We'll wish you a speedy recovery so you can start blazing on that keyboard again, Eric. But for Eric, this is Chad signing off for episode 169. We'll see you in a couple weeks for episode 170. Until then, a-boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.